This week on Masterpiece of Trash, a game review as we take the game and decide whether it should be held up on a mantle for the rest of time or whether it belongs with the rest of the garbage. Here we have Shin Megami Tensei 1, released initially on the Super Famicom or Super Nintendo in 1992. Despite its numerous releases on various consoles throughout the years, England has only ever seen two renditions of it. The first is the English fan translation of the original Super Nintendo game, which is what I played and what I'll be talking about specifically. The only other official release of the game is for iOS, which was an official translation done by Atlas USA. This version of the game is obviously updated with nicer graphics, extra plot points and balancing. However, an issue a lot of people have is with the controls on the iOS. A lot of people don't want to play this game on their phone, and for those you do have this fan translation of the original SNES version. This franchise has started taking off in the West, especially more recently. The first game in the series to be released over here was Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne or Lucifer's Call, which was released on the PS2 and featured Dante from the Devil May Cry series. It was only recently that it's really taken off over here with the release of the Persona series. Persona 3 and 4 in particular did very well in the West. They're kind of a divergence from the main series, which focuses more on the outside plot, character development and finding yourself a nice shiny waifu. Though great games in their own respect, they aren't really an accurate depiction of the series itself. So if you jump from one of those to one of the mainline games without preparation, you're going to be quite shocked. Now the series has made its way as a key JRPG series alongside the likes of Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, so it's good to see it getting some popularity here in the West. It's always had issues with localization, mainly due to the content on these games. When it came out in the 90s, they had to edit Final Fantasy games to change the name of the holy spell to white, and this game in particular has a lot of religious content in it which wouldn't have been well received in the West, as well as the sexualized character designs of some of the characters such as angels. What's the plot of the initial game in the series? Kind of game that started it all off. Loosely based on a very bad trilogy of sci-fi novels, which I have read the English translations of. They're not very good. And the games which followed it, this is sort of a reboot of the initial franchise. Shin Megami Tensei 1 begins as you're a teenage boy living in modern day Tokyo, or 90s modern day Tokyo, with your mother in your own home. And as you set out into the town, you see a lot of police barricades around, you hear rumours of strange goings on and murder in the park, the appearance of strange creatures, and over the course of this you realise that demons have started to appear and leak into our world. Following strange dreams you've been having of strange characters in a strange hell-like labyrinth, you're sent an email by somebody named Stephen, who appears later and is super based off Stephen Hawking's. Well, he sent you a computer program known as the Devil Summoning Program, which is the main plot mechanic in this game. Attached to your computer on your arm, it allows you to speak to the enemy demons and recruit them for your own team. Starting off as a fight in modern day Tokyo, this game goes through a series of stages as you meet your party characters and end up witnessing the apocalypse partway through the game, as most of the rest of the series are set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Essentially the game is fairly light on plot, but aren't many characters in particular. It's not story heavy like, say for example, the Final Fantasy series. However, it's very atmospheric. There is a clear plot. It mainly just gets straight to the point with everything that's happening. One of the game's main mechanics is the idea of alignments. This is one of the things which puts it apart from a lot of other games and one of the most interesting aspects of the series, especially in the first game, where you have the alignments of law, chaos and neutral. Now a lot of things shift your alignments, mainly the choices you make in the story, but also the alignment of the demons you use in your party, the alignment of the demons you speak to, the alignment of the demons you kill, and the alignment of churches you use throughout the game for healing and purchasing items. Now these greatly affect the gameplay. For instance, certain weapons in the game are only set to a certain alignment. You can pass certain boss fights by speaking with the enemies, perhaps even getting new items. It's easier to speak to certain enemies when you're the same alignment of them, whereas it will force you to probably fight other enemies. And most importantly, it changes the ending of the game and the final boss which you fight. As I mentioned before, another clear mechanic of this game is the devil summoning program, which allows you to communicate with enemy demons. This is very different from the Persona series, and one of the things it lacks, as this is a series where you go through the Nightmare Realms fighting through your fights, and you have to kind of get new Persona through the card game at the end. Here you have to be smart about it. You have to kind of base what you're going to choose as your dialogue options from the look and from the alignment of the enemy demon. You try and entice them over. Often they'll ask for various things like money payment, certain items in order to join your side. They could end up straight out attacking you. It's risky but rewarding, and it's one of the most fun aspects of the game. You can only recruit demons at a lower level than yourself. However, you are able to fuse different demons together, and depending on their alignment you can get a variety of new demons. However, these still can't be higher than the level yourself. This is a kind of way in order to keep your party at a high level, because the demons level up very slowly. One of the few issues I did have with this was that there aren't a lot of neutral demons. Often you have to balance your party so that it's half law and half chaos. You have to be very careful with certain aspects. The game is quite cruel if you're doing a neutral playthrough. It forces you sometimes to switch towards one of the other sides, and it can be quite hard to get back out of it. Onto gameplay, it plays like a normal dungeon crawler from the time. However, when you're inside dungeons and not on the world map, it is a first person sort of view. Going through the tunnels, I know a lot of people could take issue at this sort of style, which is the same as the early Phantasy Star games. However, in this case it worked quite well. You can bring up a map from your menu at any time, and navigating isn't particularly hard unless you have literally the worst sense of direction. With this you have your normal battle scenarios, where as the main character he largely can only do pure attacks. He can't use magic. Your other 1 or 2 party members, depending on where you are in the game, can use magic, which they learn automatically as they level up. However, for the most part, most of your party will be made up of the demons you recruit along the way. You have to try and find a balanced team, get abilities that will help you, like have some that are specifically good at magic, have ones that are good at buffs and debuffs, have ones that are good at strength. Now, one of the things that this series gets is that the games are very difficult. You're not going to have an easy time playing these. It's not your normal walk through the park, and you will die a lot of times, especially in these early games. Trying to figure out whether to attack with normal attacks, use gun attacks, use magic, what strategies to use against the enemies, it will be very tiring on your party. Everything costs money. Healing costs you money, weapons cost you money. Even using demons in battles carries its own currency, which can be very taxing on the player if they aren't very careful. But this is kind of one of the most enjoyable things about the game, is the management as you play through, as well as the strategies to overcome bosses. You can't really beat any fight just by normal attacks. You have to be smart about it. Any single battle in this game could end up with your whole party dead, so you have to be careful. There's instant kill spells. An enemy could be suddenly immune to physical attacks and you've accidentally set it to auto attack, so your party just keep using physical, which has happened to me once and was very sad as I realised that there's no way to stop my party dying. It is without a doubt one of the most rewarding games I've played. Next, onto the visuals. The game looks fairly nice for the time, to be fair. The character models and the enemy models in particular are really well drawn. The designer who also designed the mechs in Zone of the Enders is a well-known artist, and the things he's drawn here look amazing. The character models are all pretty good, and the areas don't look half bad. It's, however, still a very old game, and it plays like an old game, which may be difficult for a lot of people. It's perhaps not the best place to jump into the franchise unless you're prepared to deal with this. Now, the music is very good for the time. Obviously there's not a great amount of tracks for a SNES game, however they're very definitive and suit the feelings of each section of the game very, very well. Let's talk about the sort of enemies you see during the game. Every enemy in the game is based off mythology or religion, which is a nice, interesting twist. There's a very large religious aspect to this whole series and whole franchise, which I sort of love. With your choosing alignments, the main sort of ideals are choosing the law alignment, where you sign up with a lot of Christian religion symbols, including the angels such as Michael and Gabriel, with the aim to, at the end of the game, bring God to earth and create a perfect place with pure peace. However, the bad side of this law ideal is that everyone is controlled. Nobody has any freedom, they must praise God, and with that, they sort of lose their own humanity. As you might expect, this is one of the reasons the game couldn't get a Western release, because this is very harsh symbolism and very harsh narration of religion in itself. The Chaos Demons, on the other hand, are a mix of different characters. They can be such as goblins, demons such as Lucifer and Azura. There's quite a large mix here, and it's interesting to see this side where you'd expect it to be the evil side. It's more sort of people living for freedom itself. The world they want is a world without peace. It's a world where everybody has free will, and as such there is an essence of the strong must survive. And then you have your neutral path where you don't rely on either of these characters. A lot of the demons here are sort of legendary heroes and neutral characters from mythology. It's very interesting spin with this. There isn't a good or bad decision to make in the game. It kind of puts you in your own shoes, which is really nice. It means I will replay the game at some point to get the other endings. Choosing the neutral path in the game is straight up the hardest path, because you have the least strong demons, you have worse weapons overall, and you're forced to fight more bosses. You're forced to take on both the forces of law and chaos at the end of the game. However, it's a very interesting playthrough. One of my biggest gripes with such an old game is the pacing, because it's not very story based. You're going to be doing a lot of random battles, though it doesn't feel like grinding straight up, because you're always going in a set direction, and the battles are always interesting in their own right. It's not too bad, but it can be hard to deal with, especially with such a long game, which I believe took me around 50 hours to complete. Another issue in this is with the fan translation itself, because there's not an easy way to get this game. You either play the iOS version or you download the fan translation, but the fan translation has a number of glitches in it. There's one which stops the antique shop turning into a gun shop at the beginning of the game, meaning you can't get guns for the first third or half of the game, which is very problematic, as guns are straight up better than swords, especially in the early game, able to hit numerous enemies. On top of this, a number of glitches which could cause you getting stuck in the game. I know I had one where I got hit with a status effect, and once I tried to cure it, my description of my character all turned into question marks and I couldn't summon any demons, which was an issue. Luckily I had another save and was able to overcome this, but make sure you do multi-save when playing this game. The game is really unlikely to get another release, especially in the West. It's kind of a historical piece at this point. There's only a niche amount of people who will play this game, so there's not any point in putting so many hours into translating it when they have other games coming out like Persona 5, which they need to get out. However, despite its age, it is still an interesting piece, and it's well worth a play if you think you can handle it. I mean, I love the whole modern day setting, the post-apocalyptic setting, and also the religious influence here, as well as the art style and the music. It's a very entertaining game. Most of all, it's a very enjoyable game. One other issue I had was that it's not the most balanced. There came a point later on in the game where I was kind of able to cheese through it by getting a gun that hit every enemy and giving it charm bullets, which means the enemy can attack itself when inflicted with charm. This made a lot of the later game very easy. It meant I could inflict charm on bosses, then they would purely attack themselves. There aren't many which were immune to this. However, it didn't feel overly cheap because the game was still difficult at this point. It was still very hard to overcome it, and you kind of have to use everything you can. Like Dark Souls, but the Dark Souls of JRPGs. Overall, this probably continues as one of my favourite games of all time, but it really has not aged well. Shin Megami Tensei 1 gets an 8 out of 10 with demon designs from me, with a recommendation to take caution when going into playing this game. And that was Western Otaku. Feel free to check out my anime reviews on Your Name, Mobile Suit Gundam and Ninja Slayer, as well as my other series where I speak about random anime stuff in general and my anime verses. So, until next time.